Hey, Eskies. So let's learn our zone again for the upcoming season where we're going to start playing our 77s again. One of our biggest weaknesses as a team is downfield throws. So we're going to be using our zone mostly as a way to prevent them from throwing it and catching it in the deep area. If we believe that we are athletic enough to stop them, we probably won't be playing zone. We'll probably be playing man. So we don't need traditional zone as much compared to what we're going to be using called wings. So wings refers to the setup of our cup. In traditional zone, we usually have a mark here, a person here, and then a person here setting up a cup. If you imagine this to be filled with water. But for ours, we have, if a body is over here, wings off of the body. So basically, we're trying to make our defender, our mark, play flat because flat is the hardest for them to throw deep. It allows them to throw deep on either side, but it's very difficult for them to throw deep. If we're forcing flick, a deep throw from the flick side is very easy. If we're forcing them backhand, a backhand side huck is really easy. So we're forcing flat. We'll probably make it flat, slightly force flick, but you can adjust to that. Depending on what you believe they are stronger at throwing hucks with, if you believe that the thrower is a stronger flick hucker, you could force them slightly backhand. And if you believe them to be stronger at their flick, when they're hucking, you could force them slightly. Oops. I mean, if you think they're stronger at their backhand, you could force them slightly flick. So we have our wings here in our zone. Then we have our three mid defenders, and then our one deep deep. Occasionally, we're going to have just two people here, and then two people here, rather than three and one. But for this video, we're going to be focusing in this part of the field. We're going to be focusing on our handler defense. So, our cup, our wings, has the primary goal of stopping them from throwing deep. So, as we said, the mark makes throwing deep really hard. But then we have another person on either side. So let's say they could throw the flick, they would have to throw it through another person. So let's say they got around, they'd have to throw it through another person to get a really easy huck. But what having the wings do is we have three. Now the flight path for the frisbee is much more narrow. Now the frisbee has to come all the way around like this. That's an unrealistic. That's an unrealistic flight path. Let me semi-erase this. So what a frisbee is more likely to look like, they would have to throw it something like this. They would have to throw it like this and like this to get it around our wings. And you'll notice that they're basically having to throw it out of bounds and curve it back in for them to get any good throw off. Otherwise, they're throwing over our wings, and throwing over the mark is much more difficult and often leads to turnovers. So we are pressuring them to make deep throws really hard. Okay, so what are we sacrificing? We are sacrificing the ability to cover anything on this side of these lines. All of this is really easy to throw to. But that's not a big deal because they're not progressing up the field too much. And we want them to be constantly catching the frisbee, bouncing it back and forth, especially when it's a windy day. Windy days are our best friends because although we might start to feel like we're dropping and having a hard time, they will be having a much harder time. So let's start going into the movement of this. So the frisbee was in the middle. We set up our wings over here, and the frisbee was thrown to someone who's open beside them. The initial feeling that people want to do is have everyone run over like this. If you looked at it, they were in the wing position here, and they just shifted the wing position here. But that's not what we're going to be doing. Because if they keep throwing it back and forth, these people will be getting so incredibly tired. And throwing it back and forth isn't necessarily hard. So we don't want to be getting our cup tired for no reason. So our cup is going not to play. We're not going to be playing by being the most athletic, although I would love for us to be athletic, but we're going to beat people by being incredibly smart. So the first concept that we're going to learn is something called a scoop. So a scoop in Ultimate Frisbee means that we're not running straight to mark this person. If you look at number two, they're not going to run and set a mark like this. What they're going to do is they're going to take a banana cut and take away the lane. So they're going to run over here before they come over here. So let's look at a professional example of someone scooping. So we are going to be focusing on this defensive player in the white jersey guarding this player in the black jersey. The frisbee is currently with this player, 81, with the black jersey. And what you're going to see is that the person with the frisbee is going to swing it to the middle. This person's going to come in, get the frisbee, and instead of the person that's guarding the person with the black jersey, instead of running straight to them and setting the mark, they're going to scoop and then come in to set the mark. So what it looks like is, if you noticed, this person is way behind the play, and most people want to run straight to them and set the mark. But instead, they're going to come around and take away the continuation throw. Because what you're going to see is this person's head is now looking over here, seeing what's upfield, and they've noticed over here, we have two offensive players in the black jerseys cutting to open space, and the person defending them is behind both of the offensive players. So if this person doesn't scoop, this throw becomes extremely easy to one of these two players. So what you're going to see this person do is run this way, scoop, and take away the lane. Look at that. They ran, scooped, taking away the immediate throw to this person right over here. And instead of throwing that super obvious easy throw, he holds off. And after the scoop is completed, since it looks like they are forcing flick, he comes back in, sets the mark, and lets them throw flick, which is what they're forcing. So if we look at that again, focus over here, person in the white jersey, the person gets the reset, they scoop, takes away the throw, and then comes set the mark. So if you could imagine that, except that's our cup. Now instead of just one person over here stopping one throw, we have another person. Let's draw a little person. Standing over here, taking away this throw. One more time without any interruptions. This player scooping. Scoops, takes the lane, recovers. So the reason we want to scoop is because when the frisbee arrives at this person, they want to immediately look to throw it here. If we run towards the person like this, they'll be able to get the throw off really easily. But if instead of trying to attack the person, we attack the space that they're going to throw to, we're much more likely to be able to get the D or stop them from throwing it there. So as we watch number two scoops in this big arcing motion to take away the lane. The throwing lane is right here. And now two just put themselves in between it, stopping the throw. So if we bring it back like this, two wants to throw the four, and our player number two is able to stop that. Okay, so that's number two. What about number one? So number two was the closest person to the frisbee, they scoop. So what do you think number one does? Should they run directly towards the frisbee or should they also scoop? If you said also scoop, you are correct because we're taking away the lanes. If they want to throw the four, two number takes it away. If they want to throw to number five, one takes it away. And then this throw to number six becomes so increasingly hard that we don't have to worry about it as much. So if number two and one scooped, what do you think number three should do? Should they, one, also scoop? Should they, two, run to mark the frisbee? Or should they, three, stay and stop the frisbee from coming back? If you said scoop, I understand why you would say that. But if you remember, what do we not want our cup doing? We don't want our cup running back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So instead, three is going to take away their ability to throw it back to this person. And now, here's another term in frisbee. Instead of a cup, we have a wedge. And what a wedge is two defenders. I didn't draw that too well. A wedge is two people marking the frisbee instead of three. This person is kind of, sort of, if you look at it, it's almost as if there's a cup. But this cup has a big hole over here. This throw is also a hole, but it's a little bit harder to hit. I think one should move a little bit over here. But three's goal is to make the throw back to one extremely hard. That way, we don't have to keep running over and over and over again, especially since we have our wing defender still. What do I mean by that? Well, we have one defender here, we have one defender here, and we have this entire defender of the sideline helping us. If this person throws it and they throw it out of bounds, well, guess what? Our third defender, the sideline, did their job. So we still have our defense, which is the wings. It's just the sideline is a little bit different. Plus, we're trapping this handler, preventing them from getting the frisbee. So if we're going to watch all of them move at the same time, we're going to see two scoop, one scoop, three take away the reset option. And then if you look at two over here, oh, two scooped, but they came and eventually set that mark. So two's job is to scoop first and then mark. One's is the scoop and then become the second the second mark per se. Three is to stop this. Okay, let's say three doesn't do the greatest job or two and one does an amazing job and two is able to get it back to one. How should we recover from this? Let's start off with number three, our defender number three. Should they drop back as if they're scooping, or should they set the mark right away? I think this one's pretty obvious. They should set the mark right away. They're already really close. Just quickly set that mark. Oh, that was a bit of a spoiler. I was going to ask the other ones. So, number one, if you look at their position earlier, let's look at number one. One is closer to the frisbee than two is. So, should number one take this side of the wings or take this side of the wings? And as you saw earlier, number one should take this side of the wings, which means number two should take this side of the wings and set up our wings defense again. And now we're back to our original defense. Oh, Irish, what if they throw it back to this person? That's fine. It's hard to set up that trap when we don't have the help of the sideline, right? When this sideline isn't our teammate, it's much more difficult to set that trap. So we set up our normal wings in the middle, and whenever they're semi close to the sideline, we use that sideline to our advantage and set up the trap. In Ultimate Frisbee, we usually call it a trap. So if we look at it again, where is it? Right here. This is normally called in Ultimate Frisbee a trap. So this system where it's on the side is a trap. And then this two-person cup is called a wedge. I don't know why I went cursive all of a sudden when I'm bad at that. So let's say the frisbee moves over here to the other side. I like this even better because you're going to see the difference between the trap on the backhand side and the trap on the flick side. So what do you think everyone should do? Number one, they should, what do you think? They should scoop. Yep. Number three, what should they do? They should scoop. Yeah. And number two, what should they do? They should prevent the reset. Yeah, exactly. So that is what we are going to be initially doing. And if we watch, we see that everyone moves to exactly where you said they should have. Except, wait, what is number three doing? And that was a little bit different from what we said. So if we look at one, they scooped. If we looked at two, they prevented the reset. But number three, why did they move like this? So what number three did is they initially scooped. So this is the scoop. And then they came to set the mark. And now you could really see what people mean when they call this a trap. So now we have a wedge over here making the throws back to the middle of the field hard, a person over here making the throws up hard, and now the sideline making everything else over here hard. So you might ask, okay, why do we put a trap here like this, but our trap on this side looks different? So the reason I'm going to be making us play this way is because I want there to be a slight force flick in the way we defend. I want it so that the frisbee naturally comes to this half of the field, right over here. I'd rather not have the frisbee on this backhand side, especially because at the high school level, flick is much harder for a lot of players. Although Once you start getting good at flick, the flick feels more powerful, and there's something called backhand lag a lot of people experience. It's a lot easier to tear apart a zone with backhands because backhands are easier to finesse rather than the flick, which has more power but is often harder to have touch with. And having touch destroys zones. So we're going to be encouraging them to push this way if possible. That also means our deep defender has to watch this side more than the other side. That makes it easier for them. And that could also mean that we put our best defenders in the sixth spot, and a defender that feels like they have a bit of a harder time, we could hide their weaknesses on the five side. Just like in other sports like basketball, where they hide bad defenders like Steph Curry, but then they have good defenders like Draymond Green taking certain positions, we're encouraging them to go to our best defenders rather than to our defenders that struggle more. So now that we've trapped them here, we really don't want them to get it back here, and we're putting as much pressure as possible. Let's say that the person came in and caught the frisbee still pretty close to the sideline. What do you think we should do here? Should we treat it like a middle and set up our wings? Or should we set it up like a trap and have a wedge and then this defender stop the centering throw? So, no matter what you said, it's a little bit more complex, but I prefer the route where, as long as this defender stays far, we set up into wings again because we're not close enough to the sideline to make it an extra defender. If we're in this general area around here to here, it's hard to tell until you're on a field. But if we're in that general area, it becomes difficult to use the sideline to help us. So we're going to go back into our wings and prevent the deep throws. And then there's also the option if this person starts looking for number two, there's the cheeky poach over here. But for the most part, we don't mind that too much because if we were to have this person throw back to this player, number two, the way we address this would be, do we want to blitz this person or scoop? We would want them to scoop. Number three, what should they do? They should scoop. And number one, what should they do? This is a little bit difficult because it's in the middle rather than the sideline. But if you notice, their other handlers are over here, so they would scoop this way. We'll talk more about this in our practice because at this point it's getting super complex. But for the most part, we just want to make sure that we understand the principles of scooping. We want to understand what a wedge is versus what a cup is versus what our wings are. We want to understand what a trap is and the general concepts of why we play zone wings in general. On the next one, we're going to focus on the midfield and the deep defenders because the way they act is much different than the way that the cup acts, that our wings act.